For a series with hundreds and hundreds of episodes, it's inevitable that some things just won't make sense. The fact that it works as well as it does is a testament to Kishimoto's skill as a mangaka, yet there are some inconsistencies in the series that are a little jarring when you do finally notice them. My name is Zero, this is Kato, and today let's talk about some of the biggest retcons in Naruto. This video is brought to you by our sponsor, ExpressVPN. Sending data over an unencrypted internet connection is like playing chess against Mao from Code Geass. You're leaving yourself wide open and having all of your secrets exposed. Whenever you're connected to an unencrypted internet connection on your phone, computer, tablet, TV, etc., you're sending countless pieces of information out into the digital world that can be seen and intercepted by many different parties before they get to their intended destinations. But a VPN, or virtual private network, creates a secure tunnel between your device and the internet. If hackers are Geass users in this analogy, then having a VPN is like getting a Geass canceller. In other words, it's like wrapping your computer in a set of armor so that no one can attack its vulnerabilities. Your private information will be completely protected. But it's not just about security. I personally use ExpressVPN to get unrestricted access to all parts of the internet. A ton of websites out there are blocked depending on where you are in the world. Think of a YouTube video that was unavailable in your country, or an anime that you couldn't stream. ExpressVPN bypasses all of that, and it works particularly well for things like Netflix, with over 94 different countries that you can choose to have your location appear from. With ExpressVPN, you get the fastest speeds, 24/7 customer support, an easy-to-use service, and the #1 rated VPN provider by CNET, The Verge, Mashable, TechRadar, and more. To get ExpressVPN, just check out the description and use our link to get the first 3 months free. Please do check out the link, it helps us out a lot. Thanks ExpressVPN, and let's get back to the video. There are two pretty big retcons that happen regarding the Chunin exams. The first is the tailed beasts. Isn't it weird that they don't really explain how tailed beasts are different from giant summons like Gamabunta until deep into the war arc? In part 1, we're left to ask ourselves how they choose which monsters get sealed, and we assume that some just have a bad attitude or something. You see, initially, the tailed beasts weren't presented as a set of 9 monsters like the Kyuubi. In the early chapters of Naruto, the audience was told that Naruto actually is the nine-tailed fox in the form of a young boy, and that he might turn back to his old self at some point. That was why the nine tails disappeared when Naruto was born. But shortly into the series proper, it becomes not that Naruto is the seal, but that the nine-tailed fox was sealed inside of Naruto when he was born. So Naruto had a demon, and Gaara had his own demon. In the Chunin exams, Gaara's tailed beast, Shukaku, was even referred to as the spirit of a former elder of the Sand Village, implying that he was human at one point before he became, again this is a quote, an incarnation of sand. Nothing in Gaara's description mentioned Shukaku being a tailed beast. There wasn't really any lore about these monsters being part of a bigger family. For instance, Shukaku obviously knows the Nine Tails pretty well, they're basically brothers. But at this point in the series, that lore hadn't been planned out yet. So when Naruto used the transformation jutsu on Gamabunta to turn him into the Nine Tails in front of Shukaku, Shukaku's reaction was, well, much smaller than it should have been. You'd think the talkative One Tails would have some kind of vocal reaction at seeing its sibling and rival right in front of it, but of course he doesn't. Of course, this retcon was a brilliantly seamless change. Naruto and Gaara had so much in common that connecting them in this way made perfect sense to the audience and didn't feel like a change in the first place. It was also a good idea to make Gaara another target of the Akatsuki. This one is probably my favorite retcon of this video. Another retcon is to do with the third Hokage. When the third was introduced, the series went out of its way to say that he was the strongest ninja alive, the strongest ever. He was the god of shinobi, with other statements implying that he even surpassed all of the prior Hokage. This is then reinforced during the actual Sand Invasion. Hiruzen took out both the first and second Hokage, so surely that means he was the strongest, right? We later find out that Hiruzen was strong, but he doesn't really hold a candle to Hashirama, who is as close to a god as you can get without at least 6 paths power. Without venturing into power scaler territory, I think there's a good argument to be made that even the second Hokage was probably stronger than Hiruzen was, which makes the whole god of shinobi thing seem odd, doesn't it? This one is more understandable. Hiruzen died at the beginning of Naruto, and I'm guessing that all of this was just to make his death more meaningful and impactful. We can also explain it away by saying that the villagers were just hyping Hiruzen up with recency bias. In retrospect, Hiruzen being called the god of shinobi is really a statement about how the Leaf Village has been weakening for decades. Presumably, as the power ceiling got raised higher and higher in Shippuden, it didn't really make sense for Hiruzen to be as strong as he was previously stated to be. The Hiruzen stuff leads us to another retcon, one that really stuck out to me as a kid the first time I watched Naruto. This is weird for many reasons. In the Orochimaru vs Hiruzen fight, Orochimaru used the Edo Tensei to summon 2 caskets. These had the first and second Hokage. Then he pulled out the 3rd casket, and I think it's pretty obviously implied that this was supposed to be the 4th Hokage. Hiruzen even goes out of his way to make sure that Orochimaru can't summon this one specifically, blocking it out when he didn't block the other 2. As a first-time watcher, this raised all sorts of questions about just how powerful the 4th Hokage must have been if Hiruzen reacted this way. If Hiruzen surpassed the first 2 Hokage, which was implied to be the case, and he's afraid of the 4th, that should mean that the 4th was the strongest Hokage ever. As an adult, years later, well, this entire sequence just makes no sense at all. Again, for multiple reasons. We all know that Minato sacrificed himself with the Reaper Death Seal, meaning that he couldn't have been summoned by Edo Tensei in the first place. Yet Hiruzen reacted to the 3rd casket as if he knew specifically who would be inside it. This entire sequence just doesn't make any sense. One of the surprisingly rare, legitimate plot holes in Naruto. Orochimaru had to be summoning someone both very powerful and someone Hiruzen would be very familiar with. It couldn't have been the 4th Kazekage, that would mean Hiruzen feared him more than Hashirama. Unlike other retcons where we do get some kind of alternative explanation hundreds of chapters down the line, this is one that the series apparently just forgot. At least I definitely don't remember this ever being brought up again, which I suppose is one way to deal with a continuity issue. We have to just assume Hiruzen panicked and made a mistake, which is weird. And in retrospect, it's weird that he's more afraid of Minato than Hashirama, with what we know about the scaling now. I know we've talked a lot about the Chunin exams, and it doesn't end there. When the Sound Village attacked, they cast a genjutsu over all of the people in the stadium. Sakura was one of the only genin who broke herself out of it, which made Kakashi remark that she had a talent for genjutsu. Now, storytelling-wise, I think this is a pretty obvious setup for Sakura eventually actually learning some genjutsu of her own. Instead, this point is never brought up again. Sakura trained directly under Asanin, and it seems odd that even Tsunade never thought to actually brush up on her disciple's natural talents. But in a way she did. Sakura's talents were her proficient chakra control that even surpassed Sasuke, and her intellect and studious nature. Those are listed as the 2 talents that a medical ninja needs by Tsunade. It's weird that they just also happen to be the talents of a genjutsu user. This case is odd. On one hand, genjutsu itself never really got anywhere near the screen time it probably should have, unless it was Sharingan genjutsu, of course. On the other hand, Sakura herself didn't get anywhere close to the screen time allotted to Naruto and Sasuke, who became the actual genjutsu specialist of Team 7 in the end. So maybe this was just something that was pushed aside as Sakura herself got pushed aside in the actual series. When the Reaper Death Seal was first brought up, it was pretty clearly stated that any souls taken by the Reaper were, well, permanently sealed away. There wasn't supposed to be any way of undoing the seal. That's what made it a desperate, final do-or-die move. This made Hiruzen's sacrifice all the nobler. This made Orochimaru more desperate as he tried to move out of one useless body and into someone else's, only to discover that the state of his soul meant that he couldn't use those new arms either. Yet later on, we find the Uzumaki masks, one of which has the power to undo the Reaper Death Seal. I mean, the only real requirement to the technique is that the person wearing the mask has to slash their own stomach, which would normally be a big downside, but not for him. Why was Orochimaru so upset about the loss of his arms anyway? Did he actually find this between Part 1 and Shippuden? Because that would explain why he seems to have his arms back all of a sudden. The Reaper Death Seal is just one of those things that didn't age particularly well, even if this retcon did let us see all of the Hokage again, so maybe it was worth it. That brings us to a retcon which I think has very far-reaching implications for pretty much all of Naruto, one that most people don't really think about very often. From the beginning of the series, we know that Naruto has the 9 tails inside of him. We spend the entire series with this knowledge, with Naruto tapping into its power to fight everyone from Haku to Pain. During the war, Naruto uses its strength to stare down several other tailed beasts, all at the same time. Naruto doesn't just hold his own, he pretty much proves the 9 tails is stronger than them. This already leads to some odd problems. Why exactly is the 9 tails so much stronger than the other tailed beasts? Again, we have to assume that the Ninetales was either always stronger or has grown significantly more than the rest of them. Then we find out that the Ninetales Naruto has had the entire series is only half of the Ninetales. Yes, Minato sealed only half of Kurama into Naruto, sealing the other half into himself. Even half of Kurama can overpower every other tailed beast. This is an obvious retcon, and we need to discuss it. Okay, it was never stated that they were all nearly equal or anything, but well, a lot of the events in Naruto don't make a lot of sense now. The Sand Village only attacked the Leaf because they had Shukaku. The plan was to let the One-Tails loose and win that way. That plan seems much less feasible when the Leaf Village has a weapon way stronger than the One-Tails. I guess they hoped that the clash would destroy the village, but that means they were going to sacrifice the One-Tails and Gaara. I guess Orochimaru's calling the shots and he doesn't care about that. Why did the Akatsuki spend hundreds of episodes tracking down all of the tailed beasts when nothing but the Ninetales really matters? For Pain's plan, they really needed nothing more than just the Ninetales. It's surprising that Pain waited so long to jump Jiraiya. We're all led to believe that the first Hokage was powerful but kind-hearted. One of the big reasons for that is that he gave away almost all of the tailed beasts, keeping just one little Ninetales for Konoha. That action isn't nearly as benevolent when you realize that the other tailed beasts are basically nothing compared to the Ninetales. How is it that the Leaf Village ignored the single strongest force by far on the entire planet until after he became a Genin? The Leaf has fallen so far that it can't even control the Ninetales anymore. Its Jinchuriki is a clueless child, and the Uchiha are all but gone. Honestly, this has implications for a lot of Naruto's world bending. Like say, how are the Great Ninja Wars even possible when Konoha has something that can instantly end any war at any time? Oh right, all of the nations are funded by the revenue from their ninja villages. So these were for-profit Great Ninja Wars. Still, the rest of the planet should have all been allied against the Leaf because the strength disparity is simply too massive. Speaking of Naruto's upbringing, there's another pretty glaring retcon there. Naruto was given the surname Uzumaki rather than Namikaze, specifically because Minato was so feared that just associating with him would put him in danger. Well, in Shippuden, we learn that the Uzumakis were a clan so powerful and feared that several villages all banded together to wipe them out from existence. Bearing the name Uzumaki should have been just as dangerous as being the 4th Hokage's son, yet until Shippuden, this never really gets mentioned at all. Another inconsistency is around Minato himself. Sage Mode is extremely powerful, something only a handful of shinobi use in the entire series. Yet if Minato could use Sage Mode, why didn't he use it to defend the Leaf Village from the Ninetales? Was it just a flex? Finally, we have what most people think is the biggest retcon, Naruto being the child of prophecy. A lot of Naruto was spent with Naruto being an underdog, slowly working his way up against seemingly insurmountable odds with nothing but guts and hard work. He wants to be the Hokage, and everyone thinks it's impossible the first time they hear it, because he kinda seems pretty bad at being a ninja. Then we find out that he's actually the child of prophecy, which some fans feel somewhat invalidates a lot of his struggles. I don't think this retcon is nearly as bad as people think. Naruto was never really an underdog. He literally had a tailed beast inside of him for the entire series. To me, the series has always been more about Naruto's journey of confronting people's hate, not him getting more powerful. A classic example of this misconception is Naruto's conversation with Neji in the Chunin exams. The way the alleged contradiction is presented is as follows. Naruto argued with Neji about being able to change one's fate, how some people were always destined for greatness while other people were nothing. At the time, Naruto was still the underdog. Well, we all know what happens later. Naruto is revealed to be the chosen one. But is that really what they were arguing? If that were the case, Naruto wouldn't change his mind about Hinata after losing to Naruto, so there must be more to it than that. It's true that Neji was saying that some people are born geniuses and some people are born failures. Neji says that those who become Hokage are destined for it, which actually is correct. But he was also saying Naruto is a failure, which is demonstrably wrong. Neji thought his keen eyes could see the fates of others. Of course this rubs Naruto the wrong way. Naruto has spent the entire Chunin exams trying to get people to take a second look at him. Gaara, Neji, Lee, all of the strong guys have just been looking past him at Sasuke. None of them saw the great power inside Naruto. But then, this asshole treats Hinata the same way and has the nerve to vocalize the thoughts that Naruto fears most. Neji's entire demeanor makes Naruto desperately want to prove him wrong, the only way he knows how. But Naruto's insistence that someone's apparent fate doesn't matter infuriates Neji because of his memories of his father's circumstances. Looking back at the conversation, Naruto is trying to tell Neji that he shouldn't judge others based on his perception of their fate, because he doesn't know what anyone's fate is, even his own. Naruto was right. Neji literally didn't know he was in a show titled Naruto, and he was telling the main character that he was going to be a loser for the rest of his life. It's impossible for him to see that. Naruto being revealed to be the child of prophecy really doesn't invalidate their previous conversation. It does nothing but prove that Neji's way of life was wrong. I would like to repeat on this channel the sentiment that it is truly impressive how these behemoth stories are so coherent, especially when they are told to us over many long years of an author's life. It's easy to make mistakes and continuity errors when you're in that position, even with editors and assistants and guidebooks trying to help you keep track of everything. That's why it's becoming more popular to plan your entire series before you begin, which is such a dangerous thing for a mangaka to attempt. It's a world where your beloved story will get axed if it doesn't get the reader's attention. The more years you invest in prepping your story, the greater the risk. So the tradition was to throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks. Naruto deserves its spot among the big three for many reasons. One of them, in my opinion, is how well it handled its retcons. If you like this content, make sure to subscribe, share this video with someone who will like it, and turn on that notification bell. Before I go, I just want to give an extra special shout out to all of the lovely patrons over at patreon.com/KatoYT. We're super active in our patron Discord server, occasionally throwing some late night anime and movie watch parties. So if that's something you're interested in, pledge just a single $1 to get an invite. You can also follow us on Twitter at KatoBeyond. Links to everything will be in the description. Again, my name is Zero, this is Kato, and thank you all for listening to my dumb rants. Subscribe for more.